And we would just compare, the demographics in an area to our already open locations, home values, stock portfolios, how many people are dining out for lunch and dinner, how much wine is being purchased, how many people are streaming. It's obviously all privately kept information, but you see this metadata on how many people are around here that are going to be willing to spend. Now, the interesting thing about our brand is we know the recipe, that the concept works and is very special. I have rarely come across anything where there's like brand loyalty like there is here. You read our reviews, and I'm used to getting good reviews, but people really unpack their experience here. It's like a connection on a whole other emotional level.
This episode made possible by Restaurant Systems Pro. With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, CEO of Risen Restaurant Group, Chris Florczak. My man, Chris, are you feeling unstoppable?
I feel unstoppable today.
Yeah, man. I'm stoked to be here. Sean Lyons, somebody who I hold in high regard. I know he's at the beginning of a very long, successful career in the restaurant industry. He said that one of his most influential mentors was you.
Wow.
During his time at the Hillstone Group. I think when you hear the Hillstone Restaurant Group, you think of like excellence.
The best.
And systems, culture, scaling.
The best.
So I know this is going to be good. Mm-hmm. Zero pressure. I can't wait to get into it, my man. But before we do, let's get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or a mantra. What do you got for us?
Gosh, I think I would say, I think it's an old Chinese proverb. Give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish and he'll eat for a lifetime.
Yes. Why does that resonate so much with you?
Well, putting off all of the hats that I have to wear in growing a restaurant group, taking all of those off, the one that can never come off is that teaching, that mentorship hat as far as the people that work in our group. And unpacking that, what I mean is I can give people answers or direction or preferences, make a call on something, but really unpacking the experience that's been passed down to me or the things that I have uncovered through error or just other mentors, me passing that on is the teaching the man how to fish, right? My managers, everyone from the dish operator all the way up through who's kind of my director of operations now, the more that I can teach what I've learned, that's going to give them a lifetime of success in our industry because they love it. But hopefully, they're going to be even more successful of an operator or team member within our organization. So I think I was recently listening to one of your previous podcasts where the guest was talking about how in our industry, a lot of people kind of held knowledge close to the chest, right? Sometimes there's ego involved, who knows, for any number of reasons. I kind of want to be that open book and just constantly be pouring out through questions, where I want these managers, I want everyone that works in this group to actually be better than I am and better faster than I am.
I'm in the right place. What you just shared is the sentiment of the work I'm trying to do. This podcast mission is to teach the industry how to fish. Right.
Yeah.
And I love the image of, like, you might have heard, we're all here because we stand on the shoulders of giants.
That's right.
We're here to amplify that.
That's right.
We're providing a platform to make these shoulders as wide as possible, to like amplify that message, to get it out there. And I wholeheartedly believe that if we can transform restaurant owners, if we can teach restaurant owners how to fish, we can change the world because of the impact this
100%.
industry has, man. So I cannot wait to get into it. Before we do, big picture, paint the picture of what Risen Restaurant Group is today. Like, what is in your portfolio?
Okay, we have our one concept, the Rye Souffle. Hats off to anybody who can run multiple concepts. Makes my head want to explode because running one is tough enough. So we just have our one, but it's a very special, unique, very different experience. We have 4 locations, about a month away from opening our 5th location here in the that location will be here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. This current iteration of our group, we've been together for about 4 years. The first couple of years have been really unpacking, real estate, site selection, kind of being intentional on how we're testing this particular concept in different areas. We know with the history of the original location in Dallas, which has been there for, I think, 17 or 18 years now, that with that continued success, I mean, it's an institution now.
Yeah, 31,000 Instagram followers.
Yeah, I think TripAdvisor has that restaurant like number 4 or 5 out of 7,000 plus restaurants in Dallas. So, it's really still me, just the one-man show. I've got my right arm and kind of the brother I never had as an executive GM, kind of moving into that director of operations role. We've got a talented board of advisors, but as our group stands right now, we're on the cusp of opening the 5th location.
Is that in Tulsa?
No, we just opened Tulsa.
Okay.
That was the 4th location. That's in. We opened that about in September of 2024.
First one out of this market.
First one out of Texas.
Can't wait to get into that.
I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to. And we currently don't have any leases in the lease phase right now. We're kind of at that. As many of your guests will talk about. Growth is tough, and you want the goal is to do this in a measured and intentional way. We've got something that's like lightning in a bottle special.
Yeah.
But before we get distracted with shiny lures of, Las Vegas, this and that, where the whole thing.
You got to bake it.
Exactly. And it's really, as you dive into episode after episode, it's about the people.
Right. You're making me think of P. Terry's. A little different concept, but what they did, scaling that concept, I think it's 17 locations before ever leaving the Austin market.
Wow.
Like that, they just got market saturation, loyalty, beat out the in and outs of the world, and they owned that market. And it wasn't until they got 17 locations that they even considered going out of market. And guess where they went?
Wait,
I think either New Braunfels or San Antonio.
That's right.
Not
far. Too far. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's that idea of centrific.
Yeah, it's kind of the in and out model, the way the family I think started that with the bakery for the bread. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of economics, we're at 5 locations. How many seats does each restaurant have?
The 4 that are in my portfolio, we go from anywhere from 115 to 135.
Okay.
Including bar. We've experimented a little bit with expanding the square footage just a tad because as we can get into, our concept is not the, get in, get out, back to the office, quick turn and burn type concept. We do a lot of
family.
And a lot of larger, ladies who lunch, a lot of larger parties. You'll see bridal showers, baby showers, wedding events. So those larger parties, they're a heavy lift.
Yep.
It's a lot on, planning and what have you. And you'll notice for those that are savvy into table turn times, those parties tend to stay a little bit longer. So with the pent up demand that we have found in town, we wanted to play around a little bit with square footage so that, hey, can we host that party that starts at 10:30, a little bit before we open, and then still after that food is out and going, backfill, the regular size restaurant without really taxing the kitchen or, the main goal, never letting your quality suffer at all.
Let's stay high level.
Okay.
Between 115 and 130 seats. Would you say you're wearing a suit? You have a jacket on at least.
Yeah.
Would you say you're fine dining or fine casual atmosphere?
No, I'd say we're elevated, upscale casual, not fine dining. We don't have white tablecloth.
What's the average guest ticket?
Per person, check average can $45.
Okay, and
really depends on wine selections.
Volume per
in my portfolio, I'd say average unit volume. Even while we're new, still I'd say average. 3 million.
Okay.
We can do significantly higher than that.
And with this concept, what is a good target? Looking at prime cost of goods, labor, what are you aiming for?
Well, there's that old industry standard of 30. I will say, I've got some restrictions on some of the things I can share.
Yeah, I understand. I'm going to push for what I can get.
Yeah, no, I get that. I may be disappointing to you in that phase. I'm sorry, but I would say, our cost of goods are attractive. We're a little bit heavier on the labor side than what your average restaurant, but we're still in that. That's kind of a calculated investment that I'm making now, where we're in that growth phase, reputation phase. really making this thing special. And, I don't want managers with a clipboard trying to get people out 5 minutes early.
Right.
Maybe down the road there's a time for that.
Right.
But I would say from a store level EBITDA, it's a very attractive model if we're at the sales, that we'd like to be at. It's really promising, really attractive. But, we've got one restaurant that has been open for 18 months, and we just got into the black on our last P&L period.
Okay.
But again,
But
if
that's
you want
why
to
they say 2 years of operating capital to lay
Sure.
that foundation of loyalty.
Sure.
And I think the number one reason why restaurants don't make it is because they're undercapitalized. They don't
Definitely.
account for that.
Definitely. We've been in the black out of the gate at all of our locations, with the exception of that one, because it was a little bit of a, we're experimenting.
Right.
The group that is involved with the growth of Risen Restaurant Group is private family office who it's a group of gentlemen who are like-minded with me, just love excellence.
Yep.
They were enamored with the brand.
Yep. We'll unpackage all of that.
Sure. Okay. You got it.
But I want to focus on you and your story, and we'll get to present eventually.
Sure
but
thing.
Doing the research, I give myself about 30 minutes to kind of wrap my mind about who am I about to talk to. I don't like to know too much. And man, you made my research easy, because it looks like for the majority of your career, you went to school, Penn State.
I did, yeah.
Focused on hospitality management.
Not at first, but that's how I ended up, yeah.
And you got an internship with the Hillstone Group.
That's right. It was Houston's restaurant group at the time, before the name change, yeah.
And didn't leave until 16 years later.
Yeah, almost 17, I think.
And you came straight to this group.
That's right.
So, easy research.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Which was more exciting there.
No, but I'm excited because, Hillstone is a group that I am very well aware of. I know they're like an iron curtain when it comes to trying to get into that and learn more. I don't know if I'll ever get an interview with them, but I do want to. You are the embodiment of everything that they teach, right? Mm-hmm. That is they're your biggest impression leading into what you're doing today. Yeah. So I know there's going to be a ton of gold in today's conversation. So, 2000. You joined full time.
Yeah.
You're a manager from 2004 to 2004. Then you're a GM from 2004 to 2005. 2005, 2008, you're a regional supervisor.
Yep.
And then 2008 to 2016, you're an executive general manager. I don't even know what an executive general manager is.
It was the kind of continuation of that regional director position, but we can kind of unpack that.
And then 9 years ago, 2016, you joined Rise.
That's right.
So let's go back to Penn State, man.
Sure.
Is this around the time you decide that hotels and restaurants and management is going to be your path?
Yeah, it was as cliched as it sounds. It's one of those stories where people say you got to find what you love. Food was, like a lot of people in our industry, food was pretty close to almost everything in my upbringing. Just enamored with food, whether it was my grandmother on holiday mornings with the fixins and just family members who are in the culinary industry. It was just a big impact. But I was always kind of the nerdy school, math science kind of guy.
Okay.
On the math team, played sports, but was on the competitive math team. All that.
Did you grow up in Pennsylvania?
No, I grew up in central New Jersey.
Okay.
Which was great because just far enough away from the city that we'd have the impact of all the wonderful Italian, Polish, ethnic foods, bakeries, and a quick drive into the city. But I also got exposed to, New Jersey's the Garden State.
Yeah.
And where I grew up, we'd pass, blueberry farms and sunflowers and, ears of corn, for sale on the side of the road. So it was kind of a blessing that, yes, there was the lights of, traveling into the Bronx, going to a Yankee game and getting, a pretzel cooked on a shopping cart over charcoals. But at the same time, also seeing, some of that rich farming history and experiencing some of those, that other side of the business.
So when you found yourself at Penn State, what was your original major?
I entered as a microbiology major.
Okay.
Yeah. The goal was, I had thought I was going to go down the path of, I kind of had fallen in love with ophthalmology. I thought I was going to be an eye doctor.
Okay.
It was what kind of I felt. But I had always been working in high school I was working in a high-end, a wine shop, learning about, well, it wasn't not just high end, but everything, familiarizing myself with the names of varietals, even though I wasn't drinking it at that time.
Got it.
But then I get to school. My parents did me a great favor. They helped me with my first semester of school, and then they sat me down and gave me the school loan documents that were like, okay, if you drink beer and ruin this experience, you're going to be paying for it for a long time. So I went to work in the kitchen of the Nittany Lion Hotel, which is kind of an on-campus historic property. I just started working my way up. I was shucking oysters, cooking omelets, garnish, cheese boards for all these groups that would come in, alumni and what have you. And just...
When did you make the pivot from focusing on biology to the
Well,
restaurant?
at that moment, I was still, the course of study was still the microbiology. But for work, to pay the rent, I was working in the kitchen. And a lot of the guys in the kitchen there, I would just have a blast. I would love, I love learning about organic chemistry, but the labs, the groups, they just weren't as exciting. And I'd literally run to work. I couldn't wait to get to work. The camaraderie, the adrenaline rush, making it through. It was just, I was just enamored with it, what people would describe as the bug, if you will.
Yeah.
And a lot of the guys were like, hey, Florczak, you seem to really like this, and you kind of have a knack for this, that, and the other. You take a lot of ownership. Did you know that Penn State is, at the time, number 6 or number 7 best hospitality school in the country? And I really just, I didn't really give it the thought it deserved at first. I was more that one-track mind, math and science.
Right.
Man. I'm gonna, impress everybody and
go
go
What
that
did your parents think when you were pivoting from math and science to becoming a doctor to now wanting to work in a
luckily
restaurant?
they were they did exactly what I think I would want to model, for my own family. There's a lot of questions, no shaming, just have you thought about this? What do you think you're going to do?
Fully weighed this out.
No question. And it just slowly started chipping away. And okay, you know what? Maybe I'll look into the program. After looking in the course, I was like, wow, a lot of food chemistry, a lot of engineering, a lot of kitchen design, a lot of accounting, finance. It was like, wow, and at the time maybe our industry didn't have the same reputation that it does now as being a legitimate business.
It's changing. We're making that happen.
Which is so great. Thanks to people like you helping lay some of that groundwork. But at some point, it just felt right. I can't remember the exact moment, and I made the pivot, and it was like within the first semester.
Okay,
Eric,
so it was early on.
Yeah, no, I would say I was in my maybe my end of my sophomore year.
Got it.
And it was fireworks, man.
Yeah,
it just
I love that.
Exploded.
And what's cool, I love that you're tying, and this people don't really see it this way often, but you're tying the food and beverage industry, food, to the world of science. And I think this book was recently recommended on the show, the Comfort Crisis, and the book kind of takes this anthropological approach to our comfort as a species over time, and how today we have it so cushy. We are so comfortable to the point where it's almost a problem, because we've totally lost sight of where we've come from and how hard our ancestors had it.
100%.
And they point back to all these examples, but they talk about in that book how we basically they point to food as being the beginning, the fire of the scientific, not the scientific revolution as we know it. I think it was the 16th century, but the scientific process of okay, we're hunting. We have, there's a thesis. If we notice that we're paying attention to the patterns of this animal, and we're making a thesis of how we can capture it, and then we test that thesis. And that's where science was born, out of hunting. And then obviously agriculture, right? Cooking, chemistry, and food since the dawn of mankind has been literally forming our morphology is directly pointed to our relationship with food. And if you think that the future is going to be any different, I think we've kind of lost sight of our relationship with food and how much it literally controls everything. And I'm excited for the future. Anyway, I digress, but nobody's ever really kind of made that connection with science on the show before.
It's big time.
Yeah. But here you are, the front of the house. So it started in the kitchen, but now you're GM. So you started taking these management classes.
Yes.
And when did that pivot happen for you?
To the front of the house?
Yeah.
What up, unstoppable restaurant owners and operators? We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that Restaurant Unstoppable and Restaurant Systems Pro, we're taking our relationship to the next level. Beginning in July of 2024, Fred Langley, CEO of Restaurant Systems Pro, is making himself available once a week in Restaurant Unstoppable Network to answer all of your restaurant systems questions, whether it's be profit margins. He will look at your P&L. Bring your P&L. He will take a look at that. He will dissect it. He will help you find your profit, whether that be through budgeting, inventory management, costing recipe cards, labor, checklists, you name it. He is a master of restaurant systems, and he's making himself available to you. Fred Langley and Restaurant Systems Pro started as a consulting firm, and for over 16 years, they've been helping their clients increase their profit by 10% or more. What are you waiting for? Click the link below to join our Facebook group, Restaurant Unstoppable Network.
I guess it would have been through the course of the internship and beginning of the career with Hillstone's Restaurant Group. I had done some internships, done some front of the house stuff at Penn State. The love was always the passion for the back of the house, the food. But I just was enamored with the entire business. I remember just being as a kid sitting in a dining room. I didn't grow up with the experience of fine dining, but just being in any restaurant was just intoxicating. My grandfather would always get to know the owner of the best Chinese restaurant in town, and I can remember sitting there, with the owners sitting down with us for a half an hour, bringing the Dungeness crab out of the tank. Just things that, as a kid that it just blew my mind. It was so romantic feeling. Just, again, I go back to the word like excitement.
So eventually you join Hillstone's.
That's right.
As an internship.
That's right.
And at that point, are you back of house or are you front of house?
Well, the internship takes you through every position. I'm not quite sure if they still do those, but at the time, I had never dined at a Hillstone's when I was in school, but I would hear my professors at school, Hillstone's this. Just talk about it as the gold standard.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, what are these guys? And I'll never forget, we had a mandatory class, like a 1-credit class. It was like on Monday nights or something in an auditorium. We dressed up in a suit. We would hear these industry leaders come in. Hyatt would come in, some club management guys, different hotel guys, different restaurant groups. And the day the Hillstone's guys came to town, guys and girls, the recruitment team, it was like next level sophistication of anything I had ever seen. From the photos of the properties and the slides to the cut of everybody's suit, to the way they carry. Not arrogant. I don't mean it that way, but just like
professional,
wow,
on point,
unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it was just, to me, it was like, man, if I'm going to put on a baseball glove, I want to play for the New York Yankees.
Yeah.
It was like, so they wound up recruiting on campus. And I had spent some time in Los Angeles in summers working. I worked at a deli on Pacific Coast Highway in Malibu, had, some catering experience out there in front of the house with some family members in that industry. And I just, after one of our classes that week, I ran up to to the recruiters. I said, I'll do whatever it takes. I want to,
That's what they want to hear.
Yeah. And they said, hey, cowboy, not, they didn't say that, but it was, hey, listen, we're interviewing like 1,000 guys and girls for, 10 spots over the summer. And it was intense, lots of behavioral based interviewing, conversations, math exams, 500 question personality exams. They're really looking for the match.
Did you ever find out what they're looking for? Like, what is the avatar? What is it they're looking for on these tests?
Well, the Batres-Hallweg test is pretty interesting.
Say that one more time.
Batres-Hallweg.
Okay.
They're two psychologists. I believe they still use it. It's a very successful exam. A lot of companies may use that. Really, what they're looking for is somebody who matches their philosophy about the business. It's bringing
Values.
to light integrity issues, whether or not you're inquisitive, how well you are going to be with leadership and direction. I would say. It worked out perfectly. I landed the internship out in a location that was in the San Fernando Valley out in Los Angeles.
Where was Hillstone's at this point in terms of scale? This is now the year 1999.
Yeah, they had started in 1977. I'm going to guess they had 40 to 45 restaurants at the time.
Okay.
Uber successful.
Yeah.
Just the best of the best of what they are today.
Yeah.
And in that 12 weeks. When I spent time out there, doing every position in the house, my mind was just blown. It was like taking everything I was learning in a course setting, and then just like amplifying it from a perfection perspective, from a systems perspective. I'll describe it this way, Eric. It was the first job that I ever had in my life where every member of the building, every team member in the building, cared and took as much ownership as the management would. Like, okay, before that, when you're a high school punk working at the bottle shop or the wine shop, you're kind of like, you guys all goof off, but as long as the manager is not looking, you kind of get away with whatever. When I went to work there, the servers who were training me, the guys in the kitchen, if a recipe was, I didn't execute something well, they weren't going to check with them. They were saying, this is a 20-year prep guy. You know what? Well done. That's a little off what we're looking for. Let's discard that. We're going to set that aside for some family meal, and let's start that again. Or, somebody in the front of the house, taking ownership to a whole nother level.
I can't wait to unpackage and how
it was
execute
unbelievable,
that, man. Because that's really, I think, the biggest challenge for owners today is there's this book out there called My Company. It's My Company Too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think Tom Walter is the author of that book, and it's all about how to create what you're talking about, an entangled organization where you can't tell who the owner is because everyone treats it like they own it. And I feel like you're going to get into how they make that happen and what that process looks like of creating this culture. I want to ask one question before we move away from this time, your internship. Knowing what you know now today, and I think that you're an interesting case, but knowing what you know now today, would you go to culinary school or to hotel management school? And the reason, I'll get into why I think it's an interesting case.
For myself personally, I would.
Well, I mean, if you didn't, then you would have never gotten this opportunity. And I think that is the biggest value of going to some type of program, like whether that be Cornell or Penn State or whatever it is the network, is the access to get to these into these organizations.
Great point.
So for you, it worked out really well.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I finished up the internship, headed back for my senior year of school. I did not do a single interview my entire, I think it was by October, I received a letter with an official offer up from Hillstone's upon graduation, which I accepted immediately. I couldn't imagine working. I mean, not only had the industry bug bit me, but I was, I'm going to play for the best team, in sports.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. And, I remember, a lot of students just saying, I wouldn't even apply with Hillstone's, because, there was that, they'll never select me. And at I would call it maybe some business, immaturity at the time. That was maybe when a little bit more ego is involved for me. Like, I just wanted to go be with the best.
So yeah, what was it that was different about you? You said that you wanted to just be with the best, but what was it about your mindset that said, I don't care if this is like the Yankees of restaurants, like I'm going to go for it. Well, what characteristics do you have that we can emulate to that mindset to just go for it?
I don't know. Cause interestingly enough, when it comes to business decisions or, personal life decisions, I'm very conservative. I'm calculated. Maybe
Sean said you're very humble.
Yeah, I have no idea why I'm surprised you're sitting here talking to me.
I'm not.
I'm probably the least flashy guy. You'd probably, I'm lucky to be here. I really am. So what made me go up? I don't know, man. Maybe it was just what the universe and God intended for that moment.
Maybe a little bit of ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said about if you know too much, like you talk yourself out of it, you scare yourself out of it.
Probably. That could have been it. I love knowledge. I mean, I rarely watch TV, and if it is, it's some kind of my family will tease me. It's some type of a documentary, whether it's repair and maintenance guys that are in the building. I like to be around or nearby people who are excellent at things, and I'm like that annoying kid that just keeps going, why? Why?
Yeah.
Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that?
Sounds familiar.
I just constantly want to be soaking up stuff. Even though I'm not going to be an HVAC repair guy, by the nature of what I'm doing in our business, I kind of need to be a quasi HVAC repair guy.
So I want to start getting into the nitty gritty of so one thing I'm seeing here, looking at there's a clear structure of had Nick Cirillo on the show, the owner of Nick's Pizza and Nick's University, and he led a workshop called creating tangible paths of growth in your organization.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get hired as a new hire, you can see, okay, what are the opportunities for personal, professional growth within this organization? Like clear paths charted out for you. And when I look at your career with the Hillstone Restaurant Group or Houston's, clearly there's a path here, right? From manager to GM to regional supervisor to executive general manager. Was that like clear from day one? Like, did you know that there was a path for you?
Well, it's not like the company doesn't sit down and give you like, here's the path manual. It's really like, hey, we get to work, and you're immersed in the structure of things, and you kind of see how it unravels. And for me, it was always like, hey, whatever role I'm gonna have. There's a few stops between just manager. You kind of work your way up to what maybe some restaurants would call an assistant general manager, but kind of there's varying levels of responsibility as you move up. But it's not like a charted path. It's really just, hey, who's hitting the ball out of the park? Who's really working hard? Who is, at the end of the day, it's results, right? Like who's bringing the receipts? Whose sales are going up, whose staff is looking crisp, who's impressive. What's great about that company is instead of these rigid
pathways,
it's still privately held, so they can make decisions based on what's believed to be the best for their industry and who matches who. It's remarkable. It really is. So
you join, you have your internship, you go straight into management?
I do, yes, in Los Angeles, and then I was at a property they had on Santa Monica Boulevard, and just started working. I mean, I was the guy. I don't care if it was like 70 hours a week or whatever. It was a couple things triggered me in the beginning, which was in a good way. I remember getting like an early assignment from a general manager. It was like, okay, all right, Florczak, you're going to be in charge of the chemical program here. Here's the chemical room. Let's get our MSDS sheets in order.
What's that stand for?
Material Safety Data Sheet. I think technically they changed it to Safety Data Sheets, but a lot of restaurants don't know. You're required to keep those sheets, which are information on each chemical. God forbid somebody gets it in their eye, they inhale it. It's all the safety data
protocol.
It'd be a manual for you to go to, right? So, I got all this thing alphabetized. I stayed till like 4 a.m. The sun was coming up over Santa Monica Boulevard. I've detailed, labeled the room. And I remember coming into work the next day and hearing the phrase, "You exceeded my expectations."
Wow.
And it was like the match was lit. The match was lit. So, all I wanted to do was be impressive. And if the assignment was, have this done by Friday, I wanted it done by Thursday. If it was like, do 10 of these, I wanted to do 12.
Yeah.
Just, go out and grab it and be the person you want to be before it just comes to you or somebody hands you the opportunity. So then I got a promotion. I moved it to another concept there in Brentwood in Los Angeles. Continue to learn, just be surrounded by excellence.
As the manager?
Yeah, you work your way through bar management, through supplies management. I got the nod to go down to Irvine, California, and at the time, you get, you sit down. Here's your offer for a promotion. We'd love for you to go do this, and you're gone in 24 hours.
Crazy.
Like,
But one thing I think is really important, like an underlying message, reading between the lines in the story you just shared, is the significance of seeing and recognizing somebody. In that moment, you exceeded my expectations. We all want to be seen and valued and appreciated. In that moment, he sparked something in you.
Yeah, I've been blessed to work for a lot of great general managers. You learn a lot. You put together your management style. Some of it is, hey, I saw that. I don't want that to be part of my package, but this guy did this. This lady did that. You're kind of sculpting yourself and learning. I think in our industry, if you have a high emotional intelligence level, you're really studying people. You're watching the guests constantly. You're watching your employees. You're watching everything from the way the shoulders move to eye contact, body language, and that's going to play out, and that's going to serve you well in any business or relationship, really. But yeah, my second stop, I had a general manager who was, a young guy, super positive. I was just so inspired by this gentleman. And, I had my budget, and, the P&L gets done on that end of month morning. And the guy turns around and he dips his hand into the petty cash drawer, writes a little handwritten receipt. And he said, man, you came in under budget, you know, here's $50 in cash. And I was like, you're kidding me. You know, that restaurant at the time, you know, we were really, it was a dinner only concept, trying to make a profit. I mean, we would prep in the morning, manager prep with the lights off to keep the electricity bill down. You know, I was out there at 3:00 in the morning with, you know, borrowing from the cleaning company, the circular power scrubbers to get the gum off the sidewalk, taking staples out of the telephone bowl, painting the city bus stop and the curbs. You know, we were doing anything, you know, but it was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun. It was like, you know, sadly, I never served our country in like the armed forces. I think that would have been a great experience for me. But I've got to imagine it was that same type of camaraderie.
Something's bigger than you.
Yeah.
You're serving something bigger than you.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. But when he gave me that $50, it was like, again, another one of those life-changing moments. And I'm still friends with that gentleman today. I mean, he's just inspired me through my life. You know, I just again continue to light the fire.
Recognition, seeing people and letting them know in that moment and rewarding them, whether it just be verbal or like a little something extra.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, if you want to talk about who I, you know, later on who I am today, you know, I am an expert at seeing things that are wrong, which is, it's a blessing and a curse, right? Like, it's good that you see those things. But if I just walk around in my professional life or my private life pointing out everything that's wrong, I'm going to be a pretty lonely guy with nobody that really wants to work with me. So, you know, knowing how to filter, you know, saying more of the positive things, you know, you've heard those, you know, praise in public, you know, coach in private kind of things. We can get this. So next stop was a promotion down to Orange County, California. As a, you know, the next level kind of service manager, if you will. That's maybe like a pre-general manager phase. Was there for a while with a few general managers, just soaking it up, learning, you know. And one day I'm surfing with that buddy who gave me the $50 out of the petty cash drawer. We're down in Orange County surfing, get the call, hey, you know, they want to see you at one of the restaurants, you know, right now. So head home, shower up, it's a day off, head into the restaurant, and they say, hey, we got an opportunity. You know, it's 25 years old. We'd love for you to be the general manager of one of our restaurants in just outside of Washington, D.C. But it's an important assignment. It's one of our older locations. And with that, obviously, you know, comes, you know, history. You know, there's people, my first day there, you know, I'm working as a 25-year-old guy coming from California where the company had grown in that direction. And I could have easily walked in there as the young punk, you know, hotshot California guy. But some of the employees had been there, you know, they could have been my parents, right? So just kind of coming in with that humble respect for you know, thinking about it as, you know, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to even work in those restaurants that got paid for out of the profit from this place that's been here for 30 years.
So where was that DC location?
That was in like the North Bethesda, Rockville area.
In terms of timeline, so they started in 1977. Yeah. They had 40 plus locations by the time you joined.
That was the 11th location that was ever opened. Yeah. And interestingly enough, there had been, you know, my first day on the job was an announcement with me and the regional supervisor that location would be closing due to some trouble with the landlord and lease negotiations. So immediately I have like, I mean, I don't blame anybody, but everybody could look at me as like, wow, these people have worked here for this long. They're announcing a closing that's going to happen in a couple of months, right? And we're going to take great care of you. We can relocate you to another,
So they relocated you at the time they're telling everybody that they're
exactly my first
Why
day
do you think that was? What was their strategy? What was it about you? Why did they bring you in at that time?
I don't know. Maybe to see how I would handle it from a maturity level. This is a big assignment, you know.
Do you think that there was something about you that made you like specially equipped to be able to? Was it your soft, like you said, like you have this knack for seeing what's wrong, but also for like knowing how to deliver feedback in a way that doesn't put people down?
I got to stop you there. I don't want to paint a picture of myself as a great leader at that time. I would characterize myself that time as, you know, I was the hammer, everything was a nail. I was the, you know, getting trained to be like the Navy SEAL. So that's something that's happened over the course of my maturity. And I'll tell you a story. I know you like, you know, like learning moments about stuff like this. I'll never forget back at one of those first restaurants, being there as a manager, and we were really into hospitality, right? Being effusively friendly. If a guest makes eye contact with you, you smile, right? Like, and I carry that over into our business today. Hospitality, friendliness isn't being friendly back to somebody. You're the one in making the initial step. Two guys get in an elevator. There's normally the what's up head nod.
Yeah,
it's not natural.
Mirror. What's the word I'm looking for? Is why can I think of the word? Mirror. Monkey see, monkey do.
Yes.
What am I trying? Mirror neurons. That's what I'm trying to say. Quid pro quo. But
Yeah.
you have to be the one to initiate the level of
hospitality,
energy,
right. Yeah.
the warmth.
So here I am getting this assignment. We really want a competitive weapon. Not that it's ever delivered that way, but we want to sincerely. The great thing about Hillstone's is nothing has ever done as far as like a marketing ploy or a strategy, right? It's done because that's what's best, sincerely, right? Like, that will lead to the success. We don't do things to be fake, or that company doesn't do things to be fake. So here I am one shift, and we've got a tenured server there who, by nature wasn't the friendly, effusively friendly. And I'm a young guy, and I come up behind her. We're near the expediting station, and she's got two plates, and I think her name was Kristen, and I said, Kristen, what's going on? Come on, you got to smile. Just smile today. And I'll never forget, she turns around and looks at me with a straight face and says, I'm really sorry. My mother passed away this morning.
Why was she even there?
Right? I mean, commitment,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
I mean, everybody handles grief differently. Maybe she wanted, but it was like, you might as well have taken a Louisville Slugger to my head and feeling like, wow, and it was one of these critical path moments in my career where I could go down the path of like the corporate talking point, right? Like, look, we're going to post a sign above the drive-through window that is a big exclamation that says smile. People are looking at you. But that's not real, right? Like, you're not going to make a sign to change people, right? And it was one of those moments where I was like, man, maybe from now on I should just ask first, right? So I tried to deploy more of a tactic of, if I see somebody that's not really committed to what we've all agreed upon as a group, and maybe I'm going to pull her in. If I could do that moment over again, even though it altered the course of my career, I would have pulled her inside and said, hey, Kristen, is everything okay today? And if she's like, yeah, everything's great, then I might go into the, well, listen, we kind of agreed, smiling,
Yeah.
But if she had said that to me in private, I would have had a whole different response.
One of those 7 habits of highly effective people: first seek to understand, then seek to understand.
So I say that right now to just, I don't want to pretend to be somebody that I'm not, that I was this graceful person my entire career. I was more of the like, here's the assignment, get it done, run through walls kind of guy. And, it took a lot of mentorship and learning for me to become slowly, I would say, refined, intentional. I would hear comments from, a supervisor when I was earlier in my career. They'd be like, here's the goal. Here's what we'd like to accomplish. Now, your nature, Chris, is to like get up from this chair right now and like get it all done. But I want you to think about it. And it was kind of counterintuitive. Like early in your career, you're like, wait, think about it. Like, I just need to get it done. And what that was, mature mentorship of people saying like, what I am now in my role, there's a lot more thought involved. Yeah, there are some tasks, but there's a lot more thinking about like, who are we? Where are we going to be in a week, a month, a year?
Intentionality.
Yeah, exactly.
Get it done, but in this specific direction.
That's right. So just being fully transparent, I was not the easiest person to work for.
Yeah. Well, this is only 5 years into your career. At this
That's
point,
right. That's right.
You're still evolving.
That's right.
What were the biggest challenges for you between becoming a manager and GM? Like, what were your biggest struggles? If you had a struggle, what was the biggest hurdle you had to get over?
Within the 4 walls, or just personally, professionally? I
like to focus on struggles, or maybe looking at time. We're almost 45 minutes into this thing.
Sorry.
Don't be sorry, but there's so much more to your career that I want to make sure we get into. You're GM at this DC location.
That's right.
This is a promotion for you.
That's right.
This was only 1 year of your career, right?
Yeah.
So you went from GM to regional supervisor.
Yeah.
Take us to that point.
Well, what happened was we wound up turning the restaurant stayed open. for, some things went our way. I went to work that first day not thinking, hey, we've got 3 months, we're going to close this restaurant. I was back on the line coaching guys on how to make the salad a little bit better. I was starting to repair some small things that
even though you knew you were going to close.
Exactly. Because and the team would ask, Chris, why are you putting so much effort into this? And maybe I thought a little bit as like, hey, here's my chance with the ball. I want to gain some yards down the field. But more so, it was just like, this is what's right. I'm still representing our group.
Integrity.
And I know if George was in this building right now, we would want us as a group. We would want the guest deserves this salad looking like this.
Still a Houston's.
That's right. So as luck would have it, sales kind of took off. The group, I wasn't involved with general counsel or leasing. I'm an operations guy at that point. We were blessed with the opportunity to keep the restaurant going, and everybody was celebrating. And sales took off, and I just said, I've naturally been wired to just always take ownership. I just felt like it was my restaurant. The name Houston's was on the front door, but I'm like, this thing's mine. And I think I worked 60 days in a row, full shifts, took off a day or two, then worked like another 35. It was like, I wanted to lead by example, that I was willing to do whatever it took to make this thing a success.
So when you got there, you said within 4 months it was going to be shut down?
I think it was 3 months was the runway at first. And then there was a little bit back and forth. And like I said, it just stayed open.
So we'll say about 4 or 5 months is what you had for runway. Mm-hmm. You said it was because of the lease negotiation. Were they going to go up on rent?
I don't know the details. It'd be unfair of me to speculate on that. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I could assume so.
Right.
When you're and I deal with that now. Like when you're a successful group, there are some landlords that are just trying to take advantage. So, but again, I don't know that specifically.
But I guess really what I want, do you remember the numbers? You said when you got there, you had a 4 month runway, but you said, we're going to still treat this like it's the best, most successful Houston's in the group. You started critiquing and fine tuning and getting better. Where were your numbers from when you got there to? Do you remember? Like ballpark,
I wouldn't be able to remember. But
we drove sales. Like, give us an idea. Like what kind of traction you got?
We were definitely growing sales. I wouldn't remember exactly what our weekly or.
This was 20 years ago.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I understand.
But it was, we started building an even better team. We were inspiring people. We were getting
So you show people this at this time like. Give this guy more.
That's right.
And you got more. So
that's right.
Only a year into that, from 2005 to 2008, you became.
Yeah, I think it was probably almost maybe closer to the 2 year mark. I started spending a little more time on the phone with the gentleman who kind of, operationally handles the whole group, and he just gave me a call one day. He said, "Are you standing up? Or are you sitting down?" I said, "I'm sitting down." Well, you're the new regional supervisor of the Atlanta. He gave me a region, and for me, these 5 people that I had looked up to in the company. Now it was like, not only was I in the Yankees organization, but now I was getting called up to be like one of the starting pitchers.
Yeah.
It was just mind blowing. 27 years old. And then from there, went to Atlanta, Phoenix, started supervise,
So you were the regional supervisor for Atlanta.
That's right.
Then you moved to Phoenix from this 2005 to 2008 period.
Yeah.
How many different regions were you in?
The great thing about that group is there's constant change, creating discomfort, on purpose. So I would have, some of the restaurants in the Los Angeles market, some of the restaurants in the Scottsdale, Phoenix market.
So sorry, keep going.
They're different concepts. I had a house in Scottsdale. At one point I had a house in Scottsdale, an apartment in Atlanta, because I would oversee the Atlanta restaurants and the Phoenix.
Were they paying for this? Your different apartments? They were moving you around so much?
Yeah, the company, obviously, I'm working 6 days a week, and
right.
Some of it, they're more than fair.
Got it.
But the expectation's high.
So I'm curious. Constantly changing is what you were saying.
Yeah.
When you're saying constantly changing, are they moving you around to are things in your specific world changing, or the organization constantly changing? What are some of those examples? And again, this is going back like 15 years ago, so I don't know how relevant it is. But
sure. Well, everybody's eyes get tired, right? So you kind of stay fresh. I'll talk to some of my managers. Like when we do an opening, my director of operations guy will say, "Man, Chris, I see a lot when I come into the building, but when you come into the building, you see a lot, right?" And it really isn't it's not that I'm that talented. It's more that I've got the luxury of a fresh set of eyes. Managers that are in the building the same day, advice I would give to any manager is, if you're working for a company or you're a sole proprietor, change up your routine. Eat lunch at a different table every single day, not that one seat at the corner of the bar. Come in the front door, come in the back door, come in the side door. Try to keep your eyes fresh so that you're experiencing everything the guest is going to see. You're going to notice, at 4:30 in the afternoon, the sun reflects off of that window pane and hits this seat right in the eye, right? So visiting the restaurants, I have that luxury of having a fresh set of eyes. And the company tries to do that, again, creating that healthy discomfort, not letting anybody get stale.
Yeah, it's like your internal secret shopper, but it's not a secret. You're just of like getting, like you're forcing perspective.
That's right.
So what were there challenges for you? Like, what does the role of a regional supervisor look like? Is that your job just to go in and to look for things out of place and then to offer the perspective to put them back into place or to make it better?
I would say, you've got a number of general managers working underneath you, and it would be just elevating the game. Some of it's, the financial, education, working through P&Ls and budgeting and hitting numbers, reviews. How does the restaurant feel? My job was to kind of create, 7, 8, 9 restaurateurs, students of the business. That restaurant company, everything from the textures that are in the building to the art collection to your goal is to, really expose yourself to other aspects of the business, other environments, just pack on layers of sophistication and knowledge. So you can take things away from other people, even though you're not fine dining, and deploy that grace, that sophistication, that posture, all of those things from other environments, and just so my job was to develop these guys and girls to be as productive as possible.
What were the biggest lessons you learned in how to develop people during this time?
Okay, that everybody's different, right? Kind of everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. Learning how to help them pull and push the right levers to maximize, and then, put together some conversations about, hey, here's where, I'm a straight shooter. Here's where here are the things you're doing really well. Here are a couple areas I think we could use some growth, right? And just trying to raise the level of performance of everybody. And at the same time, inspire people. I had people that I worked for that, I want to be that guy. I want to be as good at the P&L as she is. And so it was coaching, but then also some inspiration,
Got it. How do you, I've been kind of sitting on this question, and I was going to wait until we got through, your entire career with Hillstone to kind of pull out some of the things. But it seems like maybe it was during this time as the regional supervisor where your job is to reinforce this mindset, this culture of treating it like you own it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that is something that I know every one of my listeners is like, how the fuck do you get your people to do that?
Well, first is, you got to hire the right people. You cannot, and it's just like running a dining room. Imagine a larger example of running a dining room. We try to hire for the personality and train for the skill, right? Like if I've got two candidates, one is the guy that, he can tell you left bank, right bank, Bordeaux, and marks, but isn't warm and sincere. And then there's that, the young girl that comes in, she worked at a place, she doesn't have a whole lot of restaurant experience, but man, she is just so genuine and so sincere and just warm and gracious. Like you just want to be around this person. We'll work with that person all day long. We'll teach you how to mark silverware, where beverages go. Like you can't teach a person hospitality. So similarly, you got to find the people that care, that display ownership.
Yeah, and give us, go ahead.
But just kind of stoke that fire, throw logs on that fire.
You give us the example of what they go through to find. Like, hey kid, we're gonna have 1,000 people going for this job, and you're gonna be one of 10. Yeah, right. So that is the level of high standard of selectivity. Yeah. But how do you stoke the fire once you get these people? What do they teach you? How did you? Or is this something that you just kind of had a natural inclination for?
I would say I absorbed it from. Well, there's definitely a lot of exposure. At that level, we'd get to dine at some of the best restaurants. We would do, some cooking and continued learning at, CIA and Greystone. We'd be dining in Napa. We would get sent to, internationally to places that would expose us to incredible hospitality. So you're getting that drip, right? Like, if you're going to stay at a place where you're going to learn something, right? So it was kind of my job to to continue to pass that along to everyone else. Like, what am I learning? The nuance of what hospitality.
The culture of continuing to learn.
That's right.
Yeah.
And at the same time, again, I would be on a flight within an hour and a half. I had a bag packed constantly. What I wanted to model for my guys and girls was like, I'm not going to ask of you something that I'm not willing to do myself. I'm available, almost 24/7. I'm reachable. When I'd live in Scottsdale, I'd work, 6 days a week, and inevitably on Sunday, I'd, go exercise, go for a hike, or do some yoga or something. Without a doubt, almost, every Sunday night I'm at the bar at Bandera having dinner with the general manager, just because, I just loved it.
Yeah.
I just loved it.
Yeah.
So that's the way I stoked the fire. I kind of tried to lead by example. And when you would teach somebody something that you learn, be it, something with repairs and maintenance, or how something can work in the kitchen a little bit better, or, you just see the light bulb moment go off, and you just keep feeding that,
hunger.
That hunger.
We talked about the importance of being seen earlier. The next most important things in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is growth.
Yeah.
Is becoming a better version of yourself today than you were yesterday.
Agreed.
And helping people on that journey.
Sure.
Well,
there was a saying that a guy that I knew used to use, is that, if you're hiring, our goal is to try to find the diamonds in the rough, not to take a lump of coal and press it into a diamond. Right? Meaning a lot of managers, I know you talk about the 80-20, and that kind of applies to a lot of different aspects. But I think a lot of managers will spend too much of their time with the wrong segment of their people. Listen, there's different performers in life. People are geared towards different avenues. Somebody, no matter what I do and how much I work towards it, I'm not going to be a running back in the NFL. I just wasn't gifted with that frame, right? So I don't want to lie to everybody and say, hey, you can be anything you want, right? Because there's some nuance there, you're gifted with certain talents in this direction, right? So if you've got some underperformers, you're going to give them a chance to improve, but you don't want to cross the line to where, man, as a leader, I'm spending 80% of my time on the bottom few, trying to get them to be, maybe instead of C players to be B minus players, right? What I should be doing is really spending more time with the A minus, the B, the
plus,
all those folks, instead of, and it's a tough thing to do. I mean, I've had my share of sit downs, believe me, in this career where I've had to part ways with people and do it in a way, where they're maintaining their integrity.
Yeah.
But you've got to make those tough calls, and going back to the ownership part, it's finding the right people.
Yeah.
It's finding the right people.
And if we're applying Pareto's principle to that, the 80-20 rule, if we're talking, you got A, B, C, D, the grades you can get, right? Mm-hmm. So that's 4. So 25% would be the top 20%. So you're looking at the 85s and above. Mm-hmm. The Bs and the B pluses, you're making those into A's, and you're taking the A minuses and you're taking into A pluses.
Exactly.
And when you do that, when you put all of that focus, like the culture kind of, like it steamrolls, because now you're recreating yourself.
Yeah.
And these people who have what you have, the passion you have, the talent you have, the skill you have, the natural inclination towards hospitality, and you're creating layers between you and the work. You're lifting those people up.
That's right.
In the B minuses, the C's will eventually just fall away.
Yeah.
Because they can't keep up. They don't have it. They don't want it.
Yeah. I agree.
And that's the B plus would be 85% up. That's 20% right there. That's where you want to focus.
Yeah.
So much we can cover, man.
We could talk about Hillstone all day, but I'm sure you want to kind of pivot to what
I know,
we're doing now.
and I'm sure you wanted to talk about your
I still
current
love it.
baby,
And to those guys, there's just so much admiration. I sit here in this chair only because of what they helped me become. I don't have a bad thing to say. It was super painful leaving.
Well, I do want to get into that.
Yeah.
So so you spent a big chunk of your career with the Hillstone company. I think it was like 8 years, 8 to 2016 as the executive general manager.
Okay, yeah.
So
that was kind of a continuation of the regional supervisor role. Again, experimenting with different things. They put the regionals back into an individual location.
Okay.
Where we would have the up and coming manager trainees, instead of being able to train at almost every location, it was like we're gonna deploy these manager trainees into a building with one of these regional supervisors, because to get to the regional level, we were looked on as one of the better.
So you're taking the cream of the crop, the A pluses, and you're putting an A plus in every store essentially to raise. Was there an issue with the quality at this time? Was there a struggle where things starting to slip?
It was so long ago, and I don't want to.
This is where it gets awkward.
I'd speculate. Listen, there's always room for improvement, right?
Yeah.
I think it was just reinventing. And at that time, we would still assist in I'd have that one restaurant plus the responsibility of training several managers at that time, which is if you want to train people the right way, it's not just a checklist. I mean, you're coaching, you're having conversations, you're really getting into
it's a relationship.
Everything. How's the carpet cleaned, and why do we want the AC on all night, dehumidifying so that you don't get fun. There's just, you could talk forever to build restaurateurs, right? And at the same time, we were still assisting some of the other general managers in some of the stores we previously had. It was just kind of the evolution of the company, and made a few stops there from Phoenix to Midtown Manhattan, where I later on met my wife. And then a move to Dallas. By the time I ended the career with them in Dallas, I kind of was helping, oversee the restaurants in the city. We had a location in Kansas City that I was traveling to while still, kind of developing my individual kind of home-based store, if you will. It was just fun. It was just always changing, always a new set of challenges.
What up, unstoppable restaurant owners and operators? We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that Restaurant Unstoppable and Restaurant Systems Pro, we're taking our relationship to the next level. Beginning in July of 2024, Fred Langley, CEO of Restaurant Systems Pro, is making himself available once a week in Restaurant Unstoppable Network to answer all of your restaurant systems questions, whether it's the profit margins. He will look at your P&L. Bring your P&L. He will take a look at that. He will dissect it. He will help you find your profit, whether that be through budgeting, inventory management, costing recipe cards, labor, checklists, you name it. He is a master of restaurant systems, and he's making himself available to you. Fred Langley and Restaurant Systems Pro started as a consulting firm, and for over 16 years, they've been helping their clients increase their profit by 10% or more. What are you waiting for? Click the link below to join our Facebook group, Restaurant Unstoppable Network.
You're making me think of Chris Schultz, who's now the COO, I believe, or vice president of, I don't know, his titles could have changed since I last spoke to him, but he did a conversation, had him back on the show for a second time to talk about how to scale culture. And I'm hearing what Hillstone's approach was really, you are the culture carrier as a regional supervisor. You are the embodiment of the values and the expectations and the discipline of what Hillstone's is trying to create. So you're floating around and you are imprinting your values. You're you're the mold, right? And the job is to lift the GMs at all the different locations up to your level. And if you want to make a cultural shift, you put one of these culture carriers, you keep them at one location, right? You have to have culture carriers to scale culture. And you're looking for these people who are the embodiment of that, right? And I think that's one of the big lessons that I've taken from your story so far. So in 2016, you are in Dallas. You have your own stores you're managing. How many stores? Just one store?
I think right at that moment, it was probably 4. That was the home-based store, but there were a couple other restaurants here in town, and then Kansas City at the time.
So there were 4 Houstons in Dallas.
No, one was a concept called R&D.
Okay.
There was a Hillstone and then a Houston's as well.
Got it. Got it. So what is going on in your world in 2016 where you're ready for something different? What weren't you getting?
I wasn't looking at all.
Okay.
I at the time had been a new family man, 2 young daughters. I want to say, I guess maybe 3 years old, 2 years old at the time, and this group approaches me. I'd heard of the restaurant. I'd visited the restaurant and said, we've got a group of investors. We're kind of growing this concept, or beginning to grow this concept. Would you like to come alongside of us? And at first, again, being just so enamored with, I'm a loyal guy. You can tell from the resume there. I didn't take it I didn't take it seriously. I don't mean the concept seriously, but the thought of moving, I didn't take seriously.
Say moving,
moving companies.
Got it.
Because I had the security and the excellence of working for who I worked for, and I had been close with the ownership, and everybody had treated me well. But it was just one of these, over the course of a couple of conversations on a couple of days. Again, I'd probably just describe it, assign it to. It was kind of one of those things that God had a plan for me, and things just kind of happened to where I was really, really considering it, and I said, you know what? If I ever want to go up, and put my, you've heard those things, make yourself the least smart guy in the room. Surround you, the investment group and the board that was part of the growth of Rise were, some serious heavy hitters. John Luther, who used to be the chairman of Dunkin' Brand, was the president of the National Restaurant Association. There was a handful of people. I was like, wow, I can really learn more and challenge myself. And if I'm ever going to go further, if this is really what I'm meant to do, I may have to take a step down in, the pride ladder, if you will, in the short term to maybe potentially make it to a different role later on.
So why would there be less pride? Is it, you're saying ego as being the top dog?
Yeah. Yes. And the name of the group that you work for, you could get on the phone with, vendors. And
right.
when you drop
Leverage.
the name, Hillstone or Houston's, it was like,
What can
you're
we do
moved
for
to
you?
the front of the line,
Yeah.
what I mean? So it's really easy to let that sink into to where your identity becomes that. And if you want to, I think the work I'm doing now in my life is, making sure my identity is as a healthy person and leader, and not just in what my brand is. But at the time, that was a real struggle for me. It was just like, man, again, I feel like I'm a Navy SEAL, if you will.
Yeah. Think about the level of pride and loyalty a SEAL has to the
and
country,
I don't mean
right?
that as like that's what I thought of myself. I mean
Making
that
an
as
analogy.
like I felt like I was the worst SEAL, of the Navy SEAL. Meaning I'm allowed to be in this group. I remember reading a book where it was like, I can't remember her name. She wrote, and at the end of the book, she says she never worked in the restaurant business, and she gets hired at Chez Panisse, and she's like vacuuming the carpet before the restaurant opens. She's thinking like, I cannot believe they're allowing me to vacuum the carpet at Chez Panisse. Wow. That's how, up until my last day, I felt about working for Hillstone. So, there was the power of the company, the sophistication of the company.
Paycheck.
Of course.
I'm sure.
Course.
I'm sure.
Oh,
you're
no
being
question.
taken care of.
Yeah, no question. No question.
Yeah, security, comfort.
That's right. But, it was one of those things where, literally, I'm wrestling with this decision. This is no joke. And a very well-known family here in Dallas, a regular who is a wonderful woman who is a big benefactor of a local church, and just a woman who was always like, your name is in the front of my Bible. Every day I wake up, I'm praying for your family. The woman had never called me. She had my phone number, but she had never called me. The phone rings one day while I'm at work in the peak stress moment of how am I going to make, I've got the responsibilities of a family. And she says to me, "Are you okay?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "I just can't get you out of my mind today." She said, "Ever since I woke up this morning, God wanted me to tell you he's got you, and whatever's on up for you right now, go for it. He's got you."
Wow.
And I was like, that's it? I can't argue with that.
That's wild.
It was unbelievable, mind-blowing.
And is this woman a prominent figure in the restaurant industry?
Not at all. Not at all in the restaurant industry,
Okay.
which you would have never known, had no connections. This was all kind of a private thing that was going on. So I took a leap of faith. I had the blessing of the ownership was like, why don't you take, of the new group, why don't you take like 3 months off? Which, unbelievable, So I had these young daughters. I went back home to the East Coast. I just spent some time decompressing, and there's a lot of fear going into a new.
What were they offering you? What title were they offering you?
That was a chief operating officer at the time.
COO.
That's right.
Got it.
So I joined the group, and what I will say about our new brand, one of the reasons that was attractive for me to go to this group is it's very different product than what Houston's was, and I felt like I owed it to the family, the ownership of Houston, that I didn't want to ever try to co-opt or capitalize, or, for lack of a better term,
directly non-compete, or like
but I mean even just knock off stuff. And I mean that in the most sincere way, that it just
In terms
It
of
wasn't me.
product.
In terms of product,
But
yeah.
in terms of systems, processes, operations, I mean,
Oh yeah, I mean you got to learn what works and what doesn't work. And we have some Houston's type systems in my group now, and some that aren't.
and I
Houston's
can't
type
wait to
systems.
get into that. That's
Yeah.
what I'm chomping at the bit to get into. How you leverage those lessons and how you've applied what you've learned in
Yeah.
that 16 years. to
Yeah,
what you're doing
I would
today.
love to get to that.
Yeah.
So I jump into the new group.
Real
And-
quick question before
Yeah.
you get into that.
Sure.
What was the biggest fear you had that was holding you back? The thing that got you off the cliff or the fence, to take that leap? It was this woman saying go for it, but what were the
Yeah.
things like before that call?
Yeah.
Why were you hanging on?
Well, I
What was your
promise
fear?
you I'd be transparent. So it would be fear.
Fear
it would
of
have been
what?
fear of failure. It would have been fear of, that imposter syndrome. Can I really operate? Am I good? Or is it just the framework of this amazing organization kind of propping me up?
Is it
will I
me
be,
or is it where I am?
Exactly.
How did you ever overcome that? Are you still challenging with that?
No, I still occasionally battle the imposter syndrome now. I think, but it's kind of served me well. I'm constantly doing the gut check on it. It's just continuously humbled me on not letting my ego get in the way or thinking of, I just want to learn from everybody else. I'm happy to have a seat at the table. Through my career, I've had unbelievable conversations and meetings with people outside of, from time with Phil Romano or Bob Samble, some guys where I'm like, man, I can't believe I was able to get the drip a little bit from some of those guys.
I can relate, man. It's
it's
fun
just-
being
yeah,
on
what you're
this-
doing is
I can totally relate. Just going for it,
Yeah.
right? Like you have nothing to lose.
Yeah. So
They might say no, you can't.
Yeah.
You won't be on the show. Or for you, I get what you're saying, but you don't know until you go for it.
Yeah. So I felt like, my wife is incredibly supportive and such a solid, grounded foundation for me. And she was just like, yeah, let's do it. I believe in you. And that inspired, that was wind in the sails, but the fear that held me back from ever trying, it was definitely failure. Yeah. Am I going to, and you're always hearing all these terrible stories about how most restaurants don't work out.
Yeah.
And, do I want to leave the comfort zone of a nice paycheck and security of that to kind of take some risks,
Right.
if you will?
So how do you, to this day, you still struggle with imposter syndrome?
Well, yeah, from time to time.
How do you overcome that? What is your strategy?
Yeah. Well, again, full disclosure, due to some good mentors in my life, I've started with a good counselor that can unpack, some of these thoughts that you have, so you can kind of wrestle them. I definitely, I grew up in that. Again, I'm a hammer, everything's a nail. I'm a guy. We don't talk about thoughts or you literally funnel all of that into fuel for work, and you just let the results solve it. I'll get through this. I'm going to work for 60 days in a row. And that could work as a young man, but as you start to age, you don't have that same energy.
Endurance, yeah.
A great book for you, to bring up, I recently read, I just passed it to the guy that works with me, is Strength to Strength. And it's kind of like, he really discusses different industries, whether it's doctors, lawyers, athletes. Like when you're younger, you're a striver. You can outwork the top performers. You can kind of outwork everybody else.
Yeah.
And you don't really ever think you're going to age out, or and when the first signs start to happen, a lot of people will kind of suppress it, like I do. Oh, I'm just going to work harder. I'm going to double down. I'm going to work harder. And the book really kind of punches you in the face in the beginning in that good way of like, hey, look, you're going to expire, and you are going to start to be passed by younger, sharper, faster people. So you can kind of pretend that's never going to happen. Or you can kind of embrace it, and start to ready yourself for that next phase of leadership.
Who's the author of this?
You know what? Forgive me.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I have to look.
You
Strength
said-
to Strength.
And you were going to say in that your follow-up thought. Sorry to interrupt.
I
so you can choose to think that you're going to outwork these people, or
Yeah.
you can choose to get ready for it and anticipate it. And
Yeah.
do you
Am I
remember
going to
the
be in the dining room at 10 p.m. every night? Am I going to work, 70-hour work weeks. Well, no, not really. Physically, that's not going to be enjoyable anymore. It's not going to be great for my family. It won't be good for my mental state, and I'll wind up being tired and unable to make the right decisions or help inspire and teach the way I should be.
Right.
So, the group that I kind of owe it to the people that have invested in me and our group now that, to have this counselor to kind of like, just walk through, like, how do I channel that? How do I wrestle with, not placing my identity in bad reviews, right? You can use those things and you can kind of pull some nuggets of information on how to improve, but not to assign who I am to
that one person's opinion.
Yeah, or just what sales were last night,
Okay, thank you for getting into that. Yeah. So Rise reaches out to you. Yep. They recruit you. Mm-hmm. They put you into the COO position. Yep. This is 2016.
That's right.
9 years ago. Crazy to think that was 9 years ago. Take us through the evolution of, like, without getting into any detail, we're in an airplane, we're flying over time.
Yep.
2016 to present day, what it has been, like, the points along the way.
The beginning was obviously immersing myself in this particular concept. It is, a formulation of the two founders and their lives of, founding chef, culinary trained, Lyon, France, classically trained, worked his way up, did all the fine dining, and kind of created this menu alongside of a partner who brought all of these exceptionally unique touch points into the brand.
Step one, immersing yourself in the brand.
That's right.
What was the next point of evolution?
Start and open up the next location, which at the time was Fort Worth.
What year was that?
That was 2017.
Okay.
So really getting into the design phase of things, with our architect.
We'll get into the details. What was after Fort Worth? What was the next point of evolution?
Then we start to get into where COVID, hit us in the face.
Okay. I hate talking about that, but we'll give it some attention, I guess.
Yeah.
So you were at two locations into 2020. When did you open your third?
Well, there was a location in Houston down that had opened before I joined the team. And, it really suffered at the end from a citywide construction project that was going on the intersection, like over a year-long project where they were shutting down lanes and, changing it for public transport. And it really impeded entry into our space. So right at the beginning of COVID, it got...
Okay, so when you joined, there were two locations.
That's right.
You were working on opening Fort Worth in 2017. Right. So you had three locations.
That's right.
2020 was... that Houston Rise didn't have the legs underneath it yet to sustain, bear that load, right? What happens thereafter?
Okay, so then we get into COVID.
Yeah.
Everybody's running around with their hair on fire. We're wondering in our industry, like, is there going to be a future of what we do?
When do you open your third location?
Though that's not until the group went through a little bit of a change. One of the original investors at the time, when we didn't know what was going to happen with the business, he decided to kind of take the concept on himself, and make an offer to take the rest of the group out because he believed in the concept so much, asked me to step into the CEO role, and then start growing from there. So that's when Risen Restaurant Group was hatched.
And that was 2022?
2021.
2021.
And then the next location we opened in the Woodlands in mid-2023.
Okay.
Plano here in about a year ago in 2024. That would have been March of 2024. We just opened Utica Square in Tulsa, first one out of state, in September. And then we're slated for South Lake, Texas here in the Metroplex. There was a little delay from when we started because coming out of COVID, our strategy was going to be, hey, there's going to be, sadly, probably some good second generation restaurant space out on the market right now where we could scoop some things up. Well, with the amount of government intervention and PPP loans, in a good way, a lot of restaurants were able to continue a lot longer than they may have in what we originally thought. We thought there was going to be, a lot of really good real estate opportunities to grow this thing.
So, it was like, whenever there's a fire, there's growth after, right? There's more opportunity.
Yeah.
So, you said South Slate was the last?
South Lake. That's
South Lake.
Yeah, that's a location here. It's a city in the Metroplex.
And that's your fifth location currently.
That's right.
So phase 1, 2016, you're immersing yourself in the brand. Mm-hmm. You're absorbing the new DNA. You're what does that process look like?
Well, it's very different from the organization that I had previously come from.
Yeah.
You know, when you go into something that's been successful as almost a sole proprietorship, you know, there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of interesting items that are sourced in this restaurant, right? I mean, our silverware is 80 years old, sourced from all over, you know, the countryside in France. It's
beautiful.
Yeah. You know, the pottery is handmade. The linen that you dine with is made on an antique loom in France. It's, you know, all designed for us. We sell it in the retail shop. The retail component, that's another unique thing. We've got this beautiful shop up front where we sell, you know, our custom-made hand soap. These linens guests will buy. They'll buy full sets of the silverware that are like family heirlooms, unique books that we offer. So immersing myself in the brand was obviously coming from the higher volume, systems-oriented Houston's type atmosphere to something that's a little bit slower paced dining experience, right? With all these really special, this thing is an experience.
It really is.
It is unbelievable.
Yeah, and I have questions about the challenges that come with that, right?
Sure.
But what were your challenges in this early phase of, like, what were your biggest challenges in the early phases of transitioning?
I think for me personally would always be, again, just to reveal myself, is to not want to, you know, you go to the playbook that you've developed for years that are successful, right? So, you know, you kind of want it mentally. How do I Hillstoneify this system, etc.? And that's not always going to translate great or well to another brand. So again, some of that like maturing in the business mind is like, okay, let me step back. How can I tease out what could be used from my experience to apply it into this toolbox that will work for us and won't detract from who we are?
What were the things that you identified that you could pull from your previous experiences to make the Rise brand stronger?
I would say, you know, training and development of people, the continued education, hiring principles, you know, interviewing principles, repairs and maintenance. I mean, that's one, you know, the group would take seriously. I mean, you're only, you know, you don't want to have a full restaurant on Mother's Day and your HVAC goes out or the exhaust hood, and so much of that is a result of educating the general managers and chefs to have the building like it is their own, diving into the maintenance of the, you know, if you don't change the oil in your car, you're not going to get, you may get a few thousand miles, but at some point you're going to be broke down on the side of the freeway, right? And kind of taking that mentality to our building, the physical plant.
Yeah. We got into this with the COO of the Bean Group out in Springfield, Massachusetts, and just like there's so much opportunity in putting system and process and routine around maintenance. Mm-hmm. Just like getting an air compressor and blowing like the
100% refrigeration rates.
Yeah, like little things like that. Just to like once a year or once a quarter, like we're just gonna dust.
Yeah, today I walked in and I felt, you know, it was a little muggy. It's raining here in Dallas, and I could sense immediately in my lap around the restaurant, you know, the restroom exhaust fans were off. So I'm showing the managers about, you know, let's dissect this timer and getting them to experience, okay, what that is, how that works, and how to feel for it and look for it the next time. Again, back to this teach a man to fish type thing.
30,000 feet.
Yeah.
Relative to maintenance, what is like the basic like structure that you implemented, like in terms of what does that look like? What does a strong maintenance program look like today? Like without getting into too much detail, but like the framework.
Yeah. Well, if you later on we can get into the tech stack stuff, but I'll probably be the most disappointing interview you've had in the tech stack. You know, I still at this phase of growth, my hands are in everything. Partially because I really like it, but I want to. So I mean, I've got literally an Excel spreadsheet for each location, what's annual, what's semi-annual, and we circulate that together. And I have it designed that way. I probably could outsource that, and we will maybe at some time to some more tech-savvy way of communication. But there is a little bit of discomfort and pain with like filling out some of those sheets that it's like rehearsing and reinforcing the ownership aspect. Now, some tech guys would say, man, you could streamline that. I'm not saying that the general managers spend 3 hours a month on this, but you know, I put into place a system on what are all the parts of our building, from oiling these unique. I don't know if you noticed the front doors when you walked in. I mean, those are like 200-year-old doors from an Indian temple, right? Teak wood. You know, when do we oil those? When, you know, So just checklists about when things are due and when dates come up. And
so what you're talking about right now, I think most people go the daily and weekly routines and habits. They have the weekly checklist and the daily checklist, but then there's the quarterly checklist,
semi-annual,
the annual, and it's like, okay, what are the things that we let get out of hand? We identified that we let it get out of hand. How do we create a routine, a ritual around that thing so it never happens again?
Exactly.
So to help kind of get people ahead of this, you have annual, you have semi-annual. Do you have like weekly?
There's quarterly items.
Quarterly?
Yeah.
So when you say semi-annual, is that quarterly? Does that fall under the same?
No, that would, semi-annual would be every 6 months.
Okay.
Fire suppression.
And then quarterly.
Yeah. Some of that's driven by cities and code requirements. Some of it's internal for us for prevention, maintaining our equipment. And even though part of it is to save dollars in capital expenditures, it's also really geared at keeping the guests comfortable. Like if your building is negatively pressured because your fan speeds are off and your HVAC isn't being set the right way, well, your guests are going to sit in a really humid, muggy dining room. Your units are going to be working way too hard. You're going to go through compressors or bearings. So not only are you going to be spending money, you're not giving the best experience.
Right.
And you just,
it all compounds.
Yeah.
So in terms of annual, like without getting into you don't have to go down super granular, but what are some 3 or 4 big items that most people miss in terms of an annual? What's on that annual checklist?
Well, you'd have your fire extinguisher recertification.
What's next?
Vacuum breakers for your equipment. That's your ice machines and your city required plumbing. It's basically
what's
inspection.
Next?
The changing of our flags that we fly out front. So we
is that semi-annual?
Depending on which side. We can get granular depending on which direction the building faces.
Okay.
If it's a western-facing facade, that's going to be semi-annual. And this is where you get I get geeked out by that kind of stuff.
So, okay, in terms of the semi-annual, what are the big obvious ones that people miss that today we can put a routine or
fire suppression? Your ANSOL and fire suppression type maintenance and testing. Another annual one we would do. I do preventative drain jetting. It's a little bit of an upfront expense, and that's where a plumber, is going to come in and basically clean out all of your drain lines in the building. Because I guarantee every restaurateur listening to this podcast, if anybody ever chooses to listen to my episode, they'll say, man, when the plumbing backup happens, it's without fail. It's Valentine's Day, it's Mother's Day, it's Sunday night when the plumber is, quadruple time emergency call.
How much does it cost to get somebody to come in and do a preventative drain job?
I think, $500 to $750 is a fair.
And you do that once a year.
I do that once a year. Typically, I like to do that before it gets cold, because as the ground gets colder outside, things that move down to the grease trap are going to solidify and they're going to flow differently. So by doing that, I'm investing in preventing, that emergency plumbing call where the bartender's ankle deep in water.
Right. But the point is, how much money would you lose on a Friday night if you have to close the restaurant for 2 days?
Oh God, thousands of dollars.
Right.
It's
so this is how it's
no-brainer.
You can't look at the upfront cost. You got to look at how much we're going to lose if we don't stay on top of this.
Yeah.
Okay. Semi-annual. You said fire suppression and maintenance and testing. What else?
What else would be on semi-annual? Changing making sure your filters on your water system and your coffee equipment, depending on where you are, if there's hard water, making sure filters are changed. So again, you don't want to be on a Sunday brunch and we can't make coffee and tea because we have scale buildup inside the coffee equipment.
Give me one more semi-annual.
Refrigeration checkup. HVAC, making sure your drip pans and your drain lines are blowing out, pressures are good, compressors, amps are pulling the way they're supposed to. And the second part of that checklist is
taking notes as you go.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. I mean, I can, if you want offline, I'll show you. I'll show you the checklist.
I would love that, man.
I encourage every single manager in the building to get with any technician that's here, and you're asking them, well, what did you do? Can I see the dirty filters? Can you show me, well, why did you come up with that diagnosis? And layer by layer, you're building each operator into a significantly more talented facilities maintenance operator, right? Like, which will, you're getting kind of like your PhD on the fly, on the job training on plumbing, HVAC, refrigeration. So many of these things can be deployed later on instead of the emergency call, the manager, you'll go, all right, it's Friday night. This happened. Okay, well, did I check? Let me check the breaker the breaker looks good. Let me go up and see if there's a reset. But you start learning some of the things that these technicians
This,
treat
then
you.
that.
That's right. And then you can wind up being your first line of defense.
Put it in the operations
That's right.
manual.
Or I start to hear bearings go, right? Oh, yeah, that sounds like I'm hearing some bearings go on that thing. I better get somebody out proactively versus reactively.
Yeah, and when you take the time to be proactive, to get ahead of these things, to learn from the experts,
Yeah.
now you can keep that in-house. So that
That's right.
$500 bill to
Yeah.
blast the line, just one of the examples,
Yeah.
or to call the electrician in, you can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're paying because, why did this cost $500? You just flipped the switch.
100%.
It's $500 because I knew which switch
That's right.
to flip. So when
And
we learn information,
when we learn that, we share it with anything that happens. We try to share it with the other locations in the organization. So we're all learning from any mistake. And a good saying would be, I tell all of them, you're going to get what you inspect, not what you expect from a technician, right? Okay. Every industry has its challenges with personnel, right? I have built relationships with the owners of all of these companies. And I pay my bills on time. I want to have great relationships with vendors. I want to give them the respect that they deserve, so that, we have this mutually beneficial relationship where they're going to help us. They're going to, sometimes there's a call out, that one's on me,
Right.
or they'll walk me through something over the phone. But, they'll all tell you, sometimes they get a technician that, doesn't fasten the panel back on. So as a manager, if you're not prepared and you're running around scheduling and you're short in the delivery, I want to sign for the delivery, and I just sign the work order without asking any questions. I didn't go up on the roof and double check, is the area clean? Did the guy fasten everything back up the way it's supposed to? Did I learn, right? It's no different than weighing your fish when it comes in to make sure on the invoice it's exactly, they're not weighing the box and the ice.
Right.
All of these things, again, this goes into building these restaurateurs.
Yep.
Right. And I'm going to exhaustively do that until we get to the number of locations where I can't do that on a daily basis with everybody. And then that's where the C-suite or the team, or, this guy that's I'm so impressed with, Brian, he becomes like, the partner in this on how to continuously, never losing the teaching aspect of this business.
It's in pursuit of perfection, knowing you're never going to reach it, but knowing that in pursuit of it, you're going to be in competition with yourself, and you'll be the best.
Hopefully,
no one will be perfect, but you will be among the
best version of ourselves.
Yeah. Let's jump to 2021.
Yeah.
We got about 21 minutes left together. Right. 2021 is a big point in your life.
Big time.
COO to CEO.
Yeah.
Anything worth talking about that you can bring to the surface about forming the Risen Restaurant Group?
Yeah, sure. Well, that's the first time I'm getting even more exposure to aspects of the business that I hadn't before. Lease site selection, lease negotiations, forming LLCs, operating agreements. The more administrative side of the business. I don't enjoy that part as much as being in a dining room, but it is a necessary part to learn if I want to be able to teach and grow the business responsibly.
Where do you go to learn things about site selection and lease negotiation?
Again, I'm a big advocate of just surrounding yourself with people who are excellent. So on our board, advisory board, we've got a wonderful guy who has been a preferred developer. He's had a wonderful career, preferred developer for, Target, guy that would be on the landlord side, right? The guy that would help these development agreements and leasing.
Is he a project developer, or is he the liaison between the developer and the restaurants?
Well, it wasn't simply developments, but it would be, project development, and as well as recruiting some of, these portfolios of, of retailers in these developments. But being with him and the legal team and, boots on the ground real estate guys that he has put me in touch with, I surrounded myself with experts. So, in the beginning we would use Placer data or Esri data. We'd have a subscription to Esri, which would give you just mind-blowing demographic and expense information in certain zip codes.
What's that called? Esri data?
Esri is the name of the company. And they'll provide a service where you can kind of drop in
is that ESRY?
ESRI.
Got it. Thank you. Esri data.
And we would just compare, the demographics in an area to our already open locations, home values, stock portfolios, how many people are dining out for lunch and dinner, how much wine is being purchased, how many people are streaming. It's obviously all privately kept information, but you see this metadata on how many people are around here that are going to be willing to spend. Now, the interesting thing about our brand is we know the recipe, the concept works and is very special. I have rarely come across anything where there's like brand loyalty like there is here. I mean, you read our reviews, and I'm used to getting good reviews, but people really unpack their experience here. I mean, it's like a connection on a whole other emotional level.
How do you achieve that?
Well, I'd be lying if I said it was me that achieved that. I've got my hats off to the founders on what they created here, this environment.
If you could distill it, what do you think it is about what they've created that is creating that loyalty?
Well, there's a unique feel and experience. I mean, the building kind of feels like it hugs you when you walk in, right? And everything is thoughtful and intentional. There's just nothing here that's put on a table or a wall that's haphazard. I mean, the light fixture you're sitting underneath is a couple 100 years old from a chateau in France that would have had candles on it. Got a guy down in the design district, brings in, buys these things, cleans them up, electrifies them, right? And each one's unique. And this takes there are layers upon layers of work in putting one of these things together to make it special. But I think the guest, some guests are going to know, wow, I learned, my server told me that whole wall is made of beeswax done by an artisan, right? The silverware, the linen, like we've talked about, these light fixtures, the historic things that are on the walls, the handmade pottery for the dishes. That's all on top of the already really impressive and magical dish that is a souffle. I mean, you're talking about one of the oldest dishes, on the planet. This French comfort food that is just so impressive.
I'm gonna get me one of those.
Oh my gosh. And it is an item that, man, it's fickle, and it's kind of like, sometimes when I talk to guys in the industry, it's like, man, they'll get geeked out about a souffle, but I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole, much less wrap an entire concept around savory versions and sweet versions of that.
Well, there's also something to be said about like knowing your lane and staying in it, and what is your core focus? What is what is the thing that you do that nobody else does, and do it better than everybody else?
I agree.
And I think that the most successful brands I've interviewed have found their one thing.
Yeah.
They have found the thing that they are going to be the best at, and they put all their energy into it.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, my children are in love with it now. We serve guests who are now have their own family that say, I had my 14th birthday party, at the location in Dallas. And I mean, it is a magical experience when you're in here. You go through those doors, and for an hour and a half, 2 hours, you forget that you're in Dallas, you're in Texas, and you are literally transported.
Wait, we're not in France?
Yeah, no.
I thought I got on a
That's
flight.
the goal. It worked. It worked. So, that's, you have to really experience it to truly understand it. I mean, obviously the food is, you were here earlier this morning, and we had another website taking some photographs inside the space. It's an Instagrammable photo,
Beautiful.
The food, believe me, on my days off, I'm tracking down the best barbecue spot, or I'm geeked out about this smash burger here and there. But we will get guests that will drive, in Tulsa on Valentine's Day, we had guests that were driving across state lines from Arkansas and Missouri to come dine with us for the day. I mean, because you'll pass 3 or 4 burger spots. You're going to pass, this, that, but you're not going to find anything like what we do. So going to what you just said, staying true to who we are, not trying to be who we're not. The recipe is, when I say the recipe, I mean, the brand works and people love it. So just refine that, elevate it, make sure we're protecting the guest, make sure we're hiring the right people so that this doesn't get watered down. We don't,
Yeah. It's funny. I mentioned his name earlier, Garrett Reed with Lane's Chickens, and their core value, Lane's Chicken Fingers, is protect the brand, protect the franchisee. So in their mind, that is like, what is this thing that we've bottled? Like, what have we we caught this magic in a bottle, right? How do we protect that?
That's right.
And that's your culture.
That's right.
And then the next most important thing is your people. How do we protect that? In the world of franchising, it's the franchisee. In your world, it's the employee, right? And how do we protect these people and take care of them so they can harness this magic in a bottle?
That's right. And deliver it.
Yeah.
So I think we were talking about leasing.
That was the last thing. So you were actually listing, the challenges, the new experiences, how you had to go from COO to CEO. You
That's
said site selection. You said leasing negotiations. Like, what are the other new challenges?
Gosh, I mean, all the kind of ugly underbelly, but necessary aspects of the business. Insurance packages, group health insurance. Negotiating and making the right decisions so that we are protected, we're positioned for growth. The lease stuff. Nowadays, I mean, I wish I was around for the days when deals were done on a handshake. Some of our landlords are some of these big, real estate titans where you get the 75-page lease. And I'd be, when I'm not in the restaurant, I'd be up until, 11 p.m. poring over that lease, making my notes about different sections on the side before I'd go give it over to the attorney. I didn't want to.
Sounds horrible.
Oh, it's terrible. But, going through certain things that I know, okay, here are the things that I'm going to let the attorney work on. Here are the things operationally that could be an impact to us. And just reading those, learning, asking questions. When the first couple rounds you do it with an attorney, well, why did you make that call? And then getting to know that attorneys, they can be, I mean, they're really, really talented individuals, smart, high-level guys, but they could also, you're in danger of taking a deal like too far, too grand, too many back and forth, where you're not only running up the legal bills, you don't want to have deal fatigue, right? So I immersed myself in leases, and I want to know all of that. Okay, insurance, I want to know all of that. Design, we have the same architect since Fort Worth. Shout out to Jesse Rodriguez, award-winning guy here in Dallas. Just him and me, and finding the right guy that, I see a lot of restaurant groups.
Say that name again, Jesse.
Jesse Rodriguez.
What's he do?
He's our architect. And what's great is we work together as being, I'm a fan of architecture and being in a space and describing what I want a space to feel like or how we want the guest to feel. And he's great at not wanting to make a rise his version of a rise. Like he's humble enough to want to, the assignment is, how do I make this feel like it's, but at the same time, he and I get just geeked out about each time we open up a location, we'll spend hours afterwards. Okay, you know what? We should have had the track lighting,
making
12-inch. Yeah. How do we refine? So, I mean, I think my first store, we had change orders of 1%. And I think now, I mean, this, I've kept it below 1%, close to zero, because our drawings are thought out. We're really prepared. We're not winging it because, I mean, you want to double your budget quickly. It's just not having good drawings, having a good architect, making changes on the fly. I'm exhaustively organized about that. Now, if we ever grow to, 20 locations, I'm not saying that it would be prudent for me to be that granular on every single one, but I want to know this and like the back of my hand so that I can put the right player in that spot to make those decisions as we grow. But I mean, Eric, when I tell you, I'm potentially like a restaurant addict where I can get really into the weeds and
have fun about it. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah. Just really get into the weeds about design and
listening to you talk, and I hope you take this as a compliment. In a little context before I say what I'm about to say, I just got one of my most recent interviews was with the author of Rocket Fuel. And Rocket Fuel is this EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system from the book Traction mindset that if you really want to go the distance, you need a pair, a relationship, two people, the visionary, the entrepreneur, the CEO, and generally you also need what they call the integrator, the COO. The person who loves the details, who handles all the little things. Listening to you talk, man, I hear COO. Mm-hmm. And I think when people hear that, they think it's not as important as the CEO.
Oh, it's probably more important.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, what good is a lease that's fantastic or an insurance package that's fantastic if your operations are crumbling?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely love operations. I mean, that's what got me into this business, not wanting to sit in an office. I'm really doing some of those other things right now as almost like that PhD aspect of learning so that I can be the best CEO. But I'm hungry. I'm in the restaurants a lot. I'm operations minded because that's what the guests deserve. That's what,
Well, but then the other thing that's going through my mind, there's a very rare percentage of people, like the less than 1% of people can wear both hats. And like that is like a truly special, to have vision, to have culture, to have like, to be able to echo and inspire and lead and to see opportunity where no one else can see it. The idea guy or gal, like that, plus what you have in operations is like, you are a diamond in the rough.
I appreciate you saying that.
Like that is so hard to come by.
Yeah, I'm just lucky.
Yeah.
I just got surrounded.
So what is the vision? What is the future?
Well, the vision right now is I would like us. I firmly believe that everybody in the United States deserves to get the experience of dining at a Rise.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean that I can have one everywhere, but it is special enough to me. I want people to experience this because it is really unique. I think we are definitely going down a trend line in our industry where there's a lot more, carry out food, third party delivery food, which, we don't do. And speed eating in the car. And for some people in certain days and in certain phases of life, I'm not knocking that at all. There's
a time and
unbelievably successful groups. And I partake in some of those. But for me, I want to preserve just the specialness of a dining experience. When you get around a table, when you open up a bottle of wine, when you share, an artisan cheese plate from whatever the selections are today, and you get some great conversation going, the music is, just loud enough that I can hear other people talking, but I don't hear what they're talking about. There's energy in the space. I'm looking at nice texture. Like I want to preserve that. So what that means is being really thoughtful about our growth. I do not want to open up 40 of these in 3 years and have the whole thing fold like a deck of cards. We're only as good as the people that we can, I'm all about transitioning to promoting from within. Some of the managers we have, all of the managers we have in this company are some of the most impressive individuals. We've got people who have worked tiresome careers at other groups that kind of, large companies that they got, a bad taste in their mouth from some of the systems or really top-down management. And then I've got some people that were servers who fell in love with the brand, who are really special people that I said, we want that individual on our team helping us grow and learn. We've got artistic people. So it's going to be the promote from within. The recipes are fantastic. I know the design. I know how to sign a great lease, right? It's going to really be now about find the right location and the right people. And what we've been experimenting first right now is this brand is so special, and you will drive by other burger shops. Do we have to be at Main and Main? We're doing some experimentation on purpose. Like, we're going to go a few miles offline right here, get a more convenient parking situation for our guests because they tend to not like structured parking. They want convenience, right? And here's a great, all of our to keep in line with the French dining experience, we build enclosed patios onto each one of our spaces with folding doors. So in the perfect weather, you get that. Dining, that right. Outdoor dining.
But do you want the view of a strip mall or do you want the countryside?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So finding the right location and the right people. So I want to grow and expose people to this concept as quickly as we can do in a responsible fashion. And I don't know what that looks like.
So many things, but I think that is the biggest challenge is as you scale, how do you keep the magic in the bottle?
Yeah.
Right. And as you scale, like behind every great organization is a great person and great people. Mm-hmm. And the more you grow, the more you're pulling from these great people. You're diluting the impact these great people have. So you got to build great people up as you grow. And that's the challenge. And I want to talk about training, but I also want to talk about one other thing. And I think, actually real quick training.
Yeah.
And we got, I can go a little over, but
that's fine with me. You're driving.
So in terms of training, like you did with the maintenance, just like the framing of your training program, like we can't get into all the detail, but like give us an idea of like what that framing looks like. If you're just giving me
for management training,
give me the headlines.
Okay.
With the bullet points and like 4 words after each bullet point.
Okay. Checklists.
Okay.
That's got to be the first one on there, right? Like you're not winging it. You've got a prudent plan of topics to be learned, demonstrated, and then theories to be discussed. That theory part, right? You're sitting down throughout the week with the general manager or me, okay? And we're talking about why we do these things or what this means, right?
I'm smiling a little bit because I have a feeling I know where this is going. Is it checklist everything, specification everything, time standard everything, accountability everything, in
Very
presentation?
Close. Yes, pretty close. Yes, yeah.
Sean Lyons gave me a little bit of the Hillstone's medicine.
Yeah.
But okay, just like I did there, do
Yeah.
what I did, but do what your new like framing is.
Oh, okay.
Checklists?
So it would be first. It's definitely a checklist. It's an immersion into the culture and the concept process that osmosis, absorbing and seeing. A lot of these folks come from restaurants that were things were overpromised, they underdelivered, or they were burned by here was my promised bonus and I didn't really get it, or I was told this group would be warm and welcoming, but really they were just heavy-handed and shaming.
Yeah. Try to stay high level for me real quick, and I want to get into the details. So checklist.
It would be checklists, recipes, in spending time in each position in the restaurant, discussions on theory with me or my director of operations, Brian, and then some exposure. Transferring them around to different locations so that they can get exposed to the brand in other environments, other cities.
Okay. So when you were talking about the overpromising, is that like the recipes of basically recipes for the food, but also recipes for the culture?
No, I mean culturally.
Okay.
I want my yes to be yes and my no to be no. I think a lot of people come to us and we talk about our lifestyle. What our competitive weapon, I think, in hiring and training managers here is their quality of life. And what I mean by that is, we have all worked, I think the industry's going in a better direction, but we've all worked in that kind of burnout phase, 80-hour a week, skipping days off, right? And I don't want managers will not be good if that's the lifestyle they live, right? So our managers work anywhere between 45 to 50 hours. We want them to have their 2 days off a week. I actively call, and if I see somebody skipping a vacation, I force them to get a vacation on the calendar. I try not
all examples of recipe, like standardizing the culture, the
That's right.
expectation standards.
I try not to bother them on their days off, and they don't have a ton of administrative work. What intoxicates people and what draws people to this industry is being on the dining room floor, and I think I will always protect us instead of going in that corporate route where I'm forcing somebody into the office, right? To calculate stuff for their bonus or see what the secret shopper said. I have these memories of stories of talking with guys that are like, I can't really be on the floor right now. We got a secret shop and the shopper didn't see that we had my corporate mandated, water station out. So I got to review the camera to save the video so I can prove to my regional that I deserve my bonus. All of this stuff, zero impact on the guest experience. So they do inventory once per period. They code their invoices so they know what's going out, what money is being spent, and they make their schedules.
Okay.
Other than that, they're on the floor.
And in terms of discussion on theory, any sublines, sub notes there, sub information?
Not really.
And what about perspectives, everything? I mean, kind of just making sure you get out and think you're talking about everything.
I have the luxury still at our size. I spend time at a table on every visit with all the managers. So discussing with them the perspective on our business and the way the guest feels and things that have worked, really just adding more and more and more of those layers of valuation to that person by their knowledge.
Yeah. One thing that's really unique about your concept is the level of the attention to detail. Like you said, all the silverware is sourced from France. The beeswax walls.
Yeah, the light fixtures.
The light fixtures.
Reclaimed wood, yeah.
This has to be expensive in terms of scaling, to be like, how can you, what are the challenges associated with that? I can't help but ask.
Well, any operator is going to tell you now since, before COVID, the cost of construction and materials has, there's definitely been inflation in the last 7-8 years. But one of the things, I see some operators have a great concept and they take it, they're really successful at 3,000 square feet, and then they're opening up an 8,000 square foot where the tile gets a little nicer, this gets a little nicer, and the budget's, quadruple what they thought they would spend.
So you're starting opposite.
I'm staying exactly to the recipe.
Yeah.
Maybe playing around with square footage a little bit more, but, I'm not getting egotistical about wanting to change finishes, and it's managing the budget, going through the bidding phase with contractors, making sure, the recipe works when it's our size, kind of generally the number of seats, the furnishings we're buying, and just, not blowing it out, staying responsible.
Yeah.
The
other thing that I thought was really fascinating that you pointed this out, I think the opportunity is right. I agree with you that it's going to be in the suburbs. And if you look at and I think no disrespect to Dallas, but I think it's a good example. If you fly into Dallas and you look, it's oceans of houses.
Unbelievable.
Like hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands and thousands and thousands of houses, 5 feet apart from each other, communities. And if you look at the history of humankind, I think the answer to our future is in our past. We are missing congregation, places to come together at the center of every community. You have to drive 20, 30 minutes sometimes to get to a shopping plaza for some of these places. If there's traffic, it might only be 5 or 6 miles, but if there's traffic, you have to go in your car to get to a retail marketplace, right? We have lost the center of a community. And I think that there is so much opportunity in the suburbs to become the congregation, to go to be the place where people come together. We are so disconnected.
Totally.
And I think it all happened right around the 70s with Milton Friedman's philosophy on business of the sole purpose is to scale and profit. And we just commercialized everything, you
hit the nail on the head, man.
I think there's so much opportunity.
If you notice, we don't have TVs here.
Yeah.
I don't offer guest Wi-Fi. We want to be that spot where you come and commute. I don't think it's ever going to go out of style. A couple of people, family, friends, coworkers, sitting around a table, sharing food, sharing wine, sharing stories, just communing with one another.
Yeah.
And that is never, and if you can provide that with great service, that's intentional and thoughtful, you got a winning recipe right there.
If I didn't have to rush to another interview, man, I would keep going with you. I'm
sincerely
loving this conversation. I would love
pleasure.
to come back in 5 years to talk about your continued
it's
growth.
the least I can do for you. I thank you as a guy that stumbled into this industry, the effort that you're putting forward and kind of trading hours off of your time driving around the country to share some of these stories. The least I can do is kind of just chip in my 2 cents. And if there's some guy somewhere that gets a little inspired who's, in microbiology somewhere and hears that, you can make a great rewarding, and when I say rewarding, I don't mean just financially, but I mean a really rewarding industry and career path where you're making people happy and touching people's lives. I don't want that to sound cliched, but it's absolutely true. Some of the touch points we have with guests and what we're doing for their life is outstanding.
I will go on record and say there is no other industry that is more well positioned to deliver on all the human needs as well as the restaurant industry is. When those needs be security, recognition, being seen, being valued, personal growth, self-actualization, we are at the end of the day, we are human beings. And there is no other thing that brings us closer to what it means to be a human than being a part of a tribe and to center that tribe around food and relationships. It fills the cup, man.
Totally.
I've loved today's conversation. I got to ask you a couple questions before we wrap
up.
up.
Do it.
What is one thing about your business, a value, a process, a system that makes you truly unstoppable?
I would have to say the level of care that we cultivate. Okay. Everybody that's inside this building is someone who genuinely and sincerely is caring of the guest, and wants this person to have a special experience. Gratuity is an afterthought, if you will. So I think nobody's going to stop us on being the warmest, friendliest, most sincere group that you will see as we grow.
The mission statement is to change the world through inspiring, empowering, and transforming the restaurant industry. And I think we're going to do that by changing one restaurant owner at a time. But how have you personally transformed as a restaurant professional? How are you a better man today than you were when you got started in this industry?
I'm definitely more patient, gentle, caring. Earlier on, like I said, just wanted to run through walls. And through meeting these people that work with us, they all have their stories and their families and their life challenges, and it changes your perspective on, I want to be tough on the standard, but not on the people.
Yeah. If you got the news You'd be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of you, your work, and your restaurants would be lost with your departure, with the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom you could leave behind for the good of humanity and your legacy. What would those 3 pieces of wisdom be?
Wow. Okay. Be true to yourself. Don't try to be somebody that you're not. Second might be, like Clint Eastwood said, I think it was in a Dirty Harry movie, every man's got to know his limitations. So know your boundaries. Know what you're good at and know what you need help with. Yep. And then lastly, enjoy yourself. This is a really special business we're in, and if you get bogged down with thoughts about scheduling or labor percentages, you'll put yourself to sleep. Just get out there on the floor and realize, you're making magic. And if you do it the right way, you have a real ability to impact the trajectory of a lot of people, the people that work for you. Being in a healthy, professional, encouraging environment, you can set some people on a really nice trajectory for their life.
Chris, thank you so much, man. This has been a true blast, sharing your story, learning from
My
you,
pleasure.
getting your perspective. I
humbled.
found you because of Sean Lyons.
Yeah.
I asked him, this is my North Star. Who do you respect and admire? Who's out there doing it for the right reasons? Who are the assassins of the industry that need to share their story, to be made an example of?
Yeah.
If they were a guest on the show, you'd be like, I got to listen to what they said. Who is that for you?
All right, I would think of, there's so many. I've been blessed to be just surrounded by so many great operators. I would point to a couple names come to mind. There's a guy that works out of the Columbus, Ohio area who worked for me at Houston's for a while in one of our concepts. His name's Damon Burney. He's with a group called North Star Cafe in Brassica. They got 2 concepts, but he's a great guy who really big fan of the business, student of the game, A guy that was impactful on me early in my career was a guy by the name of Don Schaefer. He helped, I think, in the early stages after leaving Houston with some of the Sweet Green growth, I believe. And he's kind of now out of the industry, but also in some service things. Just, good perspective, real positive, upbeat guy. And I could send you a couple of other names offline.
Okay.
There's some good people.
Damon, look out. I'd love to get you. Don, look out. I'd love to get you. This has been so much fun. And if we are inspired by you, maybe we want to come work for you. Maybe we want to connect with you or just follow your work. What's the best way to do that?
Sure. I'm an open book. You have my email, Chris, CHRIS, @risesouffle.com. I would just respectfully request the sales pitches to be limited, but if there's people I can help, hey man, it's the least I can do for the way people have helped me. But we're a great company to work for. I think we're headed for some really good things, and I'd love to meet some new folks. I did get you a little gift from our retail shop. I know you are traveling around in a camper, correct? So that is one of our antique made. We call them torchons. In America, you might call them tea towels. Those are the linens that guests get. And so since I imagine you probably have a lot of paper napkins or you're eating on the fly, there's something, even at home, when we want to have a nice meal with the kids, we break out a little bit of fine linen and it just changes the feel. That's so awesome, that one's a silhouette of the Dallas skyline if you want. And I'm also going to encourage you to take another one on the way out, but I want you to pick the decor.
Okay. Upside down.
But, dining with that is much better than a nylon linen company.
That's awesome. And if you wanted to see what I'm holding up in front of the camera, head over to YouTube.com/restaurantstoppable to check this thing out. And thank you so much for this, man. This is beautiful.
Hang that in the camper. It'll cheer you up every time you see it.
I was thinking about hitting up the gift shop, and I was thinking I want to check
gonna
out
walk
these
through it right
towels,
now.
man. And I think I might
You're
have
going to pick out one more.
that.
You're going to pick out one more.
Oh my God, my girlfriend's going to be so happy.
That's awesome.
Towels. She's going to love it. So this has been so much fun, dude.
I appreciate you.
I literally cannot do what I do without people like you willing to give their time, to give their knowledge, to share their perspective. You make my work possible, and there is no questioning, dude. You are unstoppable.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Cheers.